Well, good afternoon. I'm Dr. David Dobrzykowski. I'm an associate professor here at the Walton College of Business in the Department of Supply Chain Management at the University of Arkansas. I'm here today with Emmy Cardarelli, who's the Director of Club Sales and Sustainability at Unilever. And we're here today really to talk about how the coronavirus crisis has influenced her operation and supply chain, and also how she's applying, project management ideas in the midst of this crisis. So, Emmy, welcome. It's good to be with you today.
David, thanks so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Completely different way of working, but happy to be joining your class.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate your flexibility in our new world. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you're dealing with at Unilever in this coronavirus crisis?
Absolutely. So just to level set everyone for a minute, I work for Unilever, big house of brands. We have a large breadth of household brands that you see every day, spanning from the personal hygiene side of the business with deodorant, shampoo, body wash, to the food side of the business with your Knorr, your Lipton, your ice cream, your Ben & Jerry's. So a little bit of everything. That being said, the impact that COVID has had on us, as you can all probably imagine, has been tremendous. Primarily the pressures that we are seeing, the additional pressures that we are seeing and that our supply chain is feeling right now. One of the biggest challenges that we have seen, David, on the supply chain side is because there has been so much demand, there's obviously not enough output to satisfy that demand right now. We have had the need to really look into what our production capacity is right now, and we are looking into allocations. And allocations become very difficult amongst customers and amongst the different retailers out there, because of course everyone wants their fair share. And as a customer team, well, the first thing I'm going to do is advocate for my customers, whereas the CVS and Walgreens team is going to advocate for their customers, and everyone wants everything. So it's really figuring out, okay, well, there's not enough for everyone, so how do we allocate it? And that's where a couple of examples of project management come into play, because there's so many different thoughts on how you can do this, right? Do you do it in a sense where you're breaking it up and making it, equal parts to distribute it with your sales? If I'm 50% of the sales, then I should get 50% of the allocation. Or do you go that step deeper and say, well, maybe we're seeing a trend and an increase in online and pickup sales. So maybe those customers that are having more online and grocery pickup should have a little bit more of that allocation to prepare them for what's coming. Sure. So it's been, we've had a couple of streams of work streams and of project teams working on that to see what the best way to do it is. There is no best way because we're all learning from this, right? And then, oh, by the way, let's keep all of our customers happy. So we want to make sure that ultimately, regardless of where the consumer is purchasing it, that it's available for them to have. Another thing that we've had to look at, and we've really had different project teams and project management teams figure out what the best route in that avenue is line efficiencies and capacity efficiencies in our different manufacturing facilities. If we had, a perfect example would be our Dove body wash or our Dove soap. We usually have 8, 10, 12 fragrances, or if we look at our food with our ice cream, we have 8, 10, 12 different flavors. Well, just to be as efficient as we can with the capacity on the lines, do we narrow that down and just eliminate the bottom performing, 6 or 8 and keep the top 2 or 3, and at least everyone is getting that top 2 or 3. So that's been, some other decisions that we've got different teams managing and figuring out what the most efficient thing is going to be when it comes to that.
Well, thanks for that. It's really interesting that you brought up allocation, of course, because I do, of course, a lot of work in healthcare supply chain, and the healthcare supply chain, of course, everyone's talking about PPE. If you didn't know what PPE was, a month ago, everyone's an expert today, of course. And allocation is, a key, inventory kind of concept that has, again, everybody's becoming very familiar with. I had one distributor tell me the other day that, if I would have called my hand sanitizer manufacturer a month ago, they would have said, you can buy, sure, place an order for hand sanitizer. You can buy 200% of what your average order has been. And if I would have called them 3 weeks ago, they would have said 150%. And a week ago, it was a 100%. And he told me today, if I call that hand sanitizer and tell them I'd like to place an order, they would say, great, order whatever you want. It's on back order. You know, I'm also excited and intrigued by the idea that you mentioned that you're taking a bit of an unconventional approach to thinking about allocation. You know, as opposed to just a percentage of previous sales or average previous sales, you're actually thinking about how these customers are distributing product to their consumers, and I think that's a really innovative way to think about things. Again, back to healthcare, I'm doing some work with some large, using this term not as a term of art, but just a general description of large group purchasing organizations right now. And they're thinking about, well, how do we allocate medical supplies across the United States? And the knee-jerk reaction, of course, is hotspots, hotspots, hotspots. And that's terrific and important, of course, and that would result in all these supplies going to the coasts. But the truth is, if you look over, everybody's familiar now again with the inverted U-shaped distribution curve. Everybody's going back to their statistics class, right? And but if you think about each state's distribution curve, while they might be slightly different, they all overlap substantially. So while the middle of the country, right, might be a week or 10 days behind the coasts or some of the hot spots, that's not a lot of time from a lead time perspective. So,
Right.
A lot of these organizations that are attempting to provide medical supplies are thinking about this allocation idea much in the way that you are, unconventional type of thinking around fairness and equity.
We also see the retailers responding to it, saying, hey, this is also something we've never seen before, and these are the actions we're taking. Most of the retailers that are, at least in our area here, and that have presence across the country have either reduced their hours so that they can have their folks stocking overnight so that the consumer can come in the morning and find the product. They've shut down parts of the box that are non-essential. In addition to that, I know that in an effort to take care of their people, as I mentioned, Unilever's taking care of our people, they've put out quarterly bonuses. They've increased minimum wage for those people that are still there. They're hiring people because so many people are being let off right now. It's just a different time that we're living in, and every retailer and business is trying to manage as they see fit. We've also seen some, speaking of some different or unconventional business practices, which is fantastic for the people out there, is a lot of people are opening an hour or 2 hours earlier in the morning for seniors to be able to shop, those that are more vulnerable or at high risk. We really see the humanity coming out in this also, which is, it's horrible that this is a circumstance that we have to live through to see it, but it's really enlightening to see that that's still coming through.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks for that. So that's interesting. In supply chain, fundamentally, we're about, managing flows of information, material, and financial exchanges, all aimed at trying to integrate supply and demand, right? And so you've talked a little bit about allocation, which is a nice demand side kind of tool. And then you actually talked about production planning as well. What kind of SKUs do we drop from production and so forth. So there's kind of this supply side, aspect of your strategy as well. So I think that's a really kind of wise approach to integrating the two.